Welcome to our Red Hat Government Symposium Executive Insight Series. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Jeff Winterich, Account Chief Technologist at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wyatt.
So let me start by asking, where have you seen examples of how the federal government is using data to fuel digital transformation?
Well, that's a good question. So, digital transformation and becoming a digital enterprise are kind of intertwined, right? So I see a couple of items of note related to data, as the federal government transitions. One being, we're seeing a hiring and appointing of chief data officers and data scientists. And why this is important is, they need, these end users, right, that have critical missions, really have to enable a better understanding of their data pipeline along the edge to core to cloud continuum, and ensuring that the workloads land where they really should reside, all while taking data proximity, network connectivity, and time to value into account, which really means operating at the speed of relevance when you're looking at your data, right? So, it's all about the data today, which, when we break that apart a little bit, these chief data officers and data scientists, are really revisiting how they're consuming their own data, what's being dropped on the floor, where data reduction should be done, where AI and inference should be done, and how it is communicated up the food chain. So huge push to really get into the weeds on the data and operate in that construct.
Well, and then next, I'd like to explore a little bit, how has open source technology and platforms played an important, if not increasing role, as the government has faced critical challenges of late, like the COVID-19 response?
Well, that's a good question too. So, open source used to be kind of a bad word years ago, right? But now that there's been a big adoption of open source within the federal government, now it's a great tool for people to use. And, open source technology evolves and it's produced much faster than the way the federal government typically developed code, algorithms, things like that. So by using fresh open source code and tools, they realize that they're getting the benefits of hundreds of engineering hours they don't have to invest in. Thus, they can, for example, to use your COVID example, adopt open source code to detect temperature changes, perform contact tracing, and things like that. So we saw COVID kind of really take advantage of open source and the collaboration really across the world to better, our response to COVID.
And then a kind of a related question, how does open source also enable better cybersecurity for agencies in this process?
Well, the general opinion that supports why open source is better is that the actual source code is available for inspection. And if they've done their work, right, and it's true CNCF, like cloud native, it's been through incubation, there's been many independent developers that have been inside the code, and these code commitments require peer review. So the methods, process, and updating these open source projects means many folks get to see the code changes prior to committing the updates. And as you can see, as a user, the actual source code is allowed to be seen for assessment. So that really increases the cybersecurity posture because you can look at the code, line for line. So the short of it is that true open source has a lot of eyes on it, with peer reviews, code commits, and actual code for inspection before the end user has to create an executable image.
And then lastly, Jeff, from your perspective, what trends or technologies, should federal agencies be paying attention to, in the coming year as they look ahead in their investment strategies?
Well, that's a good question too. So, I think we're beginning to see what the art of the possible is with respect to a true hybrid IT digital transformation. I mentioned previously an edge to core to cloud, data pipeline, which lends itself to a hybrid IT posture. And, what we're seeing, for example, is, just recently, like last year, we developed a solution with Red Hat where you're able to take an OpenShift cluster running Kubernetes anywhere data science at the edge needs to occur, right? So that's a focus area that and a technology enablement that federal agencies should look at. And then, on top of that, so that, you can really take advantage of enterprise edge compute with accelerators. It's been here for a couple of years with that solution I mentioned, which is based on the HPE Edgeline EL8000. And again, going back to the data question, pushing more inference and analytics occurring at the edge. So I would summarize the things for people to pay attention to are Kubernetes and containers, right? So for that agile software posture, edge platforms, edge inference and analytics, again, moving more data to the point of moving more operation to where data originates. And then, really looking at the intelligent data pipeline and figuring out, again, where the data gets acted on from a workload standpoint.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Jeff Winterich, thank you so much for sharing your observations and your insights about the potential of open source technologies that keeps evolving for helping federal agencies serve the public more effectively.
Thank you, Wyatt.